Hey, welcome to the Relentless Positivity Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Martin. My guest today, his name is Jerry Scarlato. And see if you can relate to this. Everything in your life it's okay. It's not great. It's not exciting. It's not terrible. It's just kind of just there, right? And for some people, maybe that's okay. But for Jerry, he knew he could do so much more out in the world. And it's kind of his journey and what he learned along the way. He's going to help us kind of learn from that as well. So, Jerry, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you so much. That's spot on with the intro. I think a lot of people live their lives just in a comfortable place. A lot of us just get comfortable with what we have going on. We may not feel that indifference that we have building up inside of us, but when you get comfortable, it's hard to start to dig yourself out of that hole because comfort is a very deep well you can get yourself into.
Oh man, I've been in it myself, so I understand. I get it, man. I understand because it happens to the best of us, right? So I want to kind of take it back. So where did you grow up and what were you into as a kid? What would you like to do as a kid?
So I grew up in Baton Rouge and I played sports in Baton Rouge. I was only there until I was about 13 years old or so. Moved to Cincinnati area when I was 13 or 14. But when I was in Baton Rouge, I went to a school and I was technically the minority at the school, which is very unusual for a white guy, right? When I moved to Cincinnati, it was 99% white people. So it was actually a shock to me to go in the opposite direction. And I think that that actually helped me with a lot of my perspective in life moving forward, having grown up being in a place where most of the people around me were different colors and different demographics. I was upper middle class. I had a bunch of friends that were poor and on welfare. I had a bunch of friends that were lower middle class. And it helped me actually be able to gain a perspective that people are people. And I think that that actually was very helpful for me moving forward. But sports was a big part of my life from pretty much day one. Started playing sports, like I said, in Baton Rouge when I was maybe 12 years old or so. Basketball, baseball, football, all the major sports, if you will. And then once I moved up to Cincinnati, the town I moved to, it's actually called Fort Thomas, Kentucky. If you've ever seen the movie Varsity Blues or Friday Night Lights, if you've ever seen either of those, how they're big football towns, well, Fort Thomas is, you could basically record that same movie in Fort Thomas because it's a big football town. If you're a decent athlete and you go to the school there, then you're probably playing football. So, you know, again, played lots of sports going up through middle school and through high school, got in the weight room at 13 years old, basically once I moved into the Cincinnati area. Got in the weight room, haven't left it since, which has been a blessing. I think a lot of people when they play sports in high school, once they get out of that, they get out of the weight room and they get out of exercise. And having worked with a lot of people, I know you probably have in this scenario as well, they get to their 45, 50-year-old that age range, and they go, man, if only I would have just stayed in the weight room. If only I just would have stayed exercising. But at any rate, yeah, that's what I did. Life was, not tough. Like I said, we were upper middle class. Parents were very supportive. Mom stayed at home. Dad was an entrepreneur, so it was a good life.
Yeah, so you've talked about this that you had a lot going on for you. You're a good athlete, good looking dude, man. You're in shape. Yeah, you're obviously a smart guy, but you're still lacking in confidence. What do you kind of attribute that to?
So it is ironic because when I was younger, I've been physically fit my whole life. I was born with physical abilities. I was fast. I was all state in track my sophomore and I'm sorry, my junior and senior year. I was all Northern Kentucky at football my senior year. So I was good at what I did, but to be totally honest, I could have been a lot better because I protected myself a lot. My dad was very supportive in what I did. So looking back, I'm able to see the way that he supported me. But the way that he supported me was maybe not the way that I could have accepted or that I accepted well as a youngster. He was very intense about the way he came across things. It never felt like I reached his expectations. It always felt like I was reaching for his expectations. I was reaching for that love. I was reaching for that acceptance. So because of that, and this is all in retrospect, right? I'm looking back on that and seeing it. But because of that, I built this gap in my confidence. And I would protect myself from actually competing against people from time to time so that I didn't have to fail and let myself down. And so, that carried forward into my adult life. I played college football as well, and I kind of got a little bit out of that in college football, but I still did it to a degree. When I went up against somebody in practice or in a game that was either a touch better than me or about the same as me, I would waver a little bit, if you will, and then I'd find an excuse as to why that would happen. And it wasn't really until probably I recognized it when I opened my business. I was 29 years old when I opened the fitness studio. I recognized that was happening because I would run up against an obstacle during the business and I'd feel that pull. I'd feel that wanted to like go back inward and feel bad about myself kind of thing and make excuses. But I was at least able to start overcoming some of those things. And it wasn't until really the last 3 or 4 years that I actually started digging into what was going on. Like, where did this come from? What's happening? Why is this gap here? And the work has been the work. It's worth doing, but it's tough to look at yourself and go, yeah, I guess that's something that I did a long time, and I sabotaged myself so much, and I could have been so much better. Like, I know I could have been so much better in high school. I can't be mad about that. All I can do is appreciate that I can do something about it now. But it was you know, like I said, it wasn't that my dad didn't love me. Didn't He cared about me, he loved me. He was there to support me at most practices, there all the time. All the players knew him, all my friends knew him. It was just I wasn't ready to accept the way that he was giving feedback.
Yeah, that's interesting. I see that a lot. I've been coaching football for about 15 years, and you'll see these kids, they just dominate sometimes. But then they run up someone, like you said, that's either a little bit better or just as good, and they disappear. And man, I've always thought about kind of what that was. That's a great explanation what that is. And then they pull a hamstring, or they tripped or something like that. That guy didn't pancake
Yeah,
me. I tripped. That's interesting, man.
it's very
I'm seeing
real.
that now.
Yep.
It's got a good explanation. So that's cool to put that kind of together. So you said you kind of, this carried on into your 30s. You're still lacking in confidence. What was kind of the turning point? What did you figure out that made you kind of go to that next level?
Ha. Well, let's say the work continues. However, and I believe it will always continue, because I believe that we always all have those other parts of ourselves in us, those younger parts. I believe we always have that teenager in us. We have that 5-year-old in us. And all we can do is try not to judge that person too much. But at any rate, over the last 12 months, I have closed the fitness studio. I had the fitness studio for 10 years, closed it last year, and gotten a divorce. That all happened in a 6-month time frame. So it was during that time when I was able to do most of the reflecting and understanding what was really going on. Like I said, it's been the last 3 years that I've been doing a little more work, a little more personal development and trying to close that gap. But it's been especially like when you go get up against hard times, you either decide to curl up in a ball and feel bad about it, or you figure out that that's the time to actually do the hard work to figure out what's keeping you from making the next leap. And so there were definitely times where I wanted to curl up in a ball and feel bad about it, and I'm certain that there were times that I actually did it. But luckily, I had some friends that were able to pull me out and like make sure I was getting outside and still being active. But internally, I started reading more books about self confidence and I started reading more books about self esteem. And so during the times when I was out hiking and I was out doing things and just clearing my mind, I was able to reflect on the things that I was reading. I would read a couple of paragraphs and then I'd go for a hike and I would reflect and I'd go, well, what does that mean to me? How does that apply to my own life? How am I holding myself back currently? And what can I do to change those things moving forward? So being diligent about making sure not to step back into safety, meaning not to step back into feeling sorry about myself because of what I was going through was a big part of that. And then also being purposeful about digging into this thing, digging into self confidence and self esteem, and then finding time to actually reflect on it and think about it and go through the work of figuring out how I do it. So that moving forward, I can actually recognize when it's happening in the moment, and then take a different action to build confidence in myself.
Man, that's some work right there. I mean, it's one thing to be in the gym doing work. I'd much rather be doing that than right there.
Yeah,
That's some tough stuff.
I'm
That'll make
with
you
you.
sweat right there. So, I mean,
I'm
kudos
with
to
you.
you because so many people they get to that point and they do kind of curl up and metaphorically speaking, that I'm not going to face it. It's too tough. I don't know where to go. And also putting down your phone and getting outside and just doing some reflectioning. I think a lot of us could benefit from that, whether we're whatever we're going through. So I want to kind of rewind it back. So I mean, you take two major hits back to back. I mean, closing your business, the marriage dissolves. I mean, how do you get through those hardships? I mean, one of them you said, hey, you got friends that lifted you up, you got outside. What were some more things you got through those hard times through?
That's a great question, Joe, because like I said, it's so easy when you get caught up in any kind of big shift in your life, whether it's closing a business, going through a divorce, going through a career change, having to move across the country because your spouse takes a job, in a different state. Like all those things are tough. And so there's definitely things that you can do. I think first it starts with recognizing the things that you control, because in those moments, it feels like everything's out of control. When you're closing a business, you're like, "Oh, I just want to grab it and I just want to figure it out."
Yeah.
Not that we were closing for financial reasons; it was for a whole host of reasons. When you got a business, you understand. But you want to figure out what you can control, right? And in those moments, it's like I feel like I can't control anything in my life. So I took some time to figure out the things I could control. And the main things that you control are the process you go through every day, the things that you do on a regular basis. And I've already hit on some of it, but it's definitely worth repeating again because it is that important. When you focus on the things you can control, then you have a sense of calmness in your mind. You have a sense of calmness in your body. And the process is literally the things that you say you're going to do every day to make either yourself better or to move something forward in your life, and then just doing those things. So for me, waking up at the same time every day, having the same morning routine, wake up, meditate, drink coffee, read a book, go for a walk. Those were the things I would do first thing in the morning. And then I would try my best to get some work done. And that was the hardest time because the work is like the stuff that you can't control quite as much, especially it's like you're doing stuff, having to go through the divorce and doing stuff, having to close the business, and it's not fun and it feels icky. So it's like I'm doing my best to try and get that done. And then I always had something in the middle of the day that I could go do to get outside or to just get away from it. And generally it was going for a hike. So around noon or 1, I would go outside and I'd go for a hike for about 30 minutes. I'd make sure I was at least in the trees somewhere so that I was surrounded by green stuff, which actually is very helpful for keeping you calm and keeping you sane. So highly recommended to do. And then I'd go back and do more work. And then in the evening, I would have another thing that I would go do. It would be another workout, or I would go outside again. I actually did a lot more exercise during that time because I knew I could control that. I can control being outside and going for a walk. I knew that I had that in my schedule, and that was something I could look forward to in between those times where I felt like things were out of control. And honestly, that was probably the biggest thing, was just paying attention to the things I could control and then actually building more things in that I could control. And most of those things should be, because a lot of people will revert to alcohol and substance abuse or doing stupid things like scrolling on your phone, which I fully admit there were times I scrolled on my phone. I don't drink. I haven't drank in probably 15 years, so I didn't fall back on that, thanks goodness. But like definitely times I scrolled on my phone, but still having these things built in that I controlled was so important to keeping my sanity. And again, just having something to be able to focus on to go, I know I have this over here, even though this is just like thrown up in the air.
Man, those are two huge nuggets. I don't know if you guys caught them. Make sure, because one of them is having those non-negotiables. This is what I do every day, no matter what. If you can start getting some of those in your life, man, your life will change. And then the other one, I like to call it the triple A. Action alleviates anxiety. Whenever you start doing something, rather than just sitting there staring at the problem or avoiding it by getting on your phone or drinking, man, you'll feel, even if the problem's still there, you'll feel so much better because you're actively working on that. So that's two huge takeaways, man. Those are awesome. And you were going, like I said, you're going through these two major life events at once. If it can get you through that, then imagine what you do when those are kind of put away and you can start thriving the rest of your life. Man, those are great right there. So, and through this, it's, I mean, anyone can go out and kind of hike and mentally reflect. That's some mental toughness right there, that you can do these things and do that mental lifting. So you're a mentally tough person. What's kind of some tips that you would give someone for building that mental toughness?
So mental toughness, I think it's worth starting with the definition. So what is mental toughness? I think it's a word or a phrase that's thrown around pretty often now. And it's like, what is that? Well, mental toughness is the ability to just, when you're confronted with something, an obstacle in life, unforeseen usually, your ability to not be emotionally drug around by it. Your ability to not, it's not that you have to go at it with like full on courage. Cause I think a lot of people think of it as like having this superhuman ability to just attack something. Trust me when I tell you that's not something that was like that I was going at with these things. Like I thought, again, I was somewhat ready, but I wasn't ready. So it's the ability to not let it drag you around fully. So with that being said, emotional resilience is part of that mental toughness. Emotional intelligence is a big part of that mental toughness. And that basically means not letting your emotions be the thing that dictates what you do and how you act and how you respond. Instead, being able to recognize your emotions when they pop up, no matter what the emotion is, recognizing it and then being able to look at it and go, okay, what is this and how useful is this to me? And do I need to sit here and feel bad about it? If I need to sit here for a second, I can sit here for a second. But is it going to do me any more good to be able to sit here longer than a couple of minutes? So it's not necessarily being able to just be like stone cold stoic and like barreling through stuff that you're just like being confronted with, but being able to recognize that those emotions are coming at you and that they're not you. They're not who you are. And so many people allow emotions to drag them around. And that's a big reason why you've dealt with this with training people regularly. Motivation is just a feeling or emotion. And so many people quit their health and fitness journey because they don't feel motivated now. You have to recognize that's just one example of how on the opposite end of that, when that goes away, you still have to keep going. If you still want to have a good life, like it's something that you have to keep barreling through. Whenever you're going through something hard, when you feel sadness come in, you have to recognize it's okay to feel sadness. It's okay. It's not, but it doesn't mean that you have to carry it forward. It's when you attach to it that it actually carries forward. It's not that it happens and that you feel it. It's that you attach to it and you go, I'm a sad person. Instead of going, I'm feeling sadness in this moment. Well, what can I do instead to redirect that energy and put it into something different? So that's really, I believe, the crux of mental toughness is just being able to not let your emotions kind of drag you around and pull you in a bunch of different directions and being able to recognize when they pop up that it's not you, that it's just a thing that's happening. And then you can choose to redirect that energy into something else.
Man, that's really cool. I never heard it explained that way, but that's an awesome definition and way to look at it. That, hey, I know, getting back to football, since you're a football guy, I'll throw this one at you. That,
Yeah.
hey, don't get beat twice, right? Something happened. You know, it's bad in the moment. This is going on, but don't let it keep dragging you down. Don't keep losing from that same situation next day and then weeks on down the road. You know, if you're a DB and you get beat deep, you know, what'd you learn? What happened? Kind of thinking about it, and then you got to move on, right? You got to have short memory in just the same way. So that's a great definition, man. I'm gonna steal that. Don't I'll give you credit, but I'm gonna steal it.
No doubt, brother. No doubt.
So, I mean, I've heard you say one time that mental toughness could one day save your life. I mean, what do you mean by that?
Well, to go back to my example, excuse me, and I doubt I doubt that's going to be the hardest thing I go through. As tough as it was to close a business and to get divorced all within a 6 month time frame, I just know that that's not going to be the hardest thing that I go through. So developing mental fortitude, the mental toughness, the mental resilience that I've developed through that will prepare me for the next big thing that then also comes up that I'm not going to be prepared for it, but I am more prepared than I was before that happened, before I got divorced and I closed the business, because I thought I was prepared when I came into that, but I wasn't. And there was a lot of development I had to do. So it's when David Goggins says that the phrase that he uses is life's going to continuously throw haymakers at you. So when life throws a haymaker at you, if you are building mental resilience and mental toughness before that, when that happens, you'll at least be more prepared for it. It doesn't mean you're going to be fully there. It's very unlikely that that's going to be the case, but you'll be more prepared. The other way that I like to think about it is you don't rise to the level of your expectations, you fall to the level of your training. So you have to do these things moment to moment. You have to pay attention to these things day to day. And that means that when someone cuts you off while you're driving to work, don't get pissed off about it. Just recognize that you're like a little upset about it and then move on. That's one small example of building mental resilience in a moment to moment time frame that will then potentially pay dividends down the road when life throws a haymaker at you. Because if you're not ready, there's a good chance that you'll go into what we talked about in the beginning, potentially fall back on a crutch of some sort that's not going to be beneficial.
Man, yeah, I think that's so common that when two people do face those haymakers and life's been going pretty well, nothing too major has ever happened. When that thing does hit, if you're not ready, it crushes a lot of people, right? Because they haven't had to do any training, so they're not ready for it. So I think it all gets back to what you were talking about earlier. It's just having that, being able to take those actions instead of just getting crushed. I mean, recognize it, take the action, and then just get on with your life. Right. I mean, that's kind of a simplified way of doing this. And I'm not telling people just get over it. I'm not one of those guys, but what's your next action step rather than just sitting in the moment? And we've been through those moments where it does. I mean, you're stunned for a while. I'm sure you may have had days where you woke up and just like, man, what happened? This is not how I
Definitely.
predicted things, but then you get back at life, right? Because you're not serving anybody, much less yourself. You're just going to sit there and wallow and not move on. So yeah, it could save your life for real.
Yeah, the way that I like to think about it is you're never going to be fully to the point where it's like things just don't phase you at all. You just got a wall built up around you and you're just good to go. You're stone cold. Everything's good. The goal is to make your highs higher and your lows higher, is to shift things upward. It's to not spiral down as far. It's to catch yourself higher so that you don't drop as deep. That's the goal. When those things happen, you're going to drop. You're going to feel that sink for a second, and that's okay. But the goal is to catch yourself here instead of catch yourself here. Because right now the habit is to catch yourself here, to catch yourself when you're at the bottom of it. But if you catch yourself here eventually, then you don't have as far to dig. And then eventually you catch yourself here and you slowly get higher and higher and you don't have as far to dig out. And therefore you can eventually get to the point where you can gain momentum faster. You can get going again faster.
Yeah, that's great. I just interviewed this guy recently that he had his spinal cord severed, and he said that he got to the point he was just in so much pain, and he just feel sorry for himself, and he would have these moments where he would spiral back, and it used to take him a month, and then it took him 3 weeks, and then it took him 2 weeks, and then 1 week, but he just kept at it and working back, and now he has moments like you talked about that he can get back into it. So that's a great illustration which just showed that hey, the hole gets a little bit shallower each time. So you keep putting in the work, and that's something you keep hammering home. You got to put in the work consistently over and over. So kind of in the same vein, kind of tell people what you're doing now about speaking about putting in work.
So now I went from being one of the most important people being in a business. I was the guy, right? Quote unquote, if you will. I didn't think of myself as the guy, but I was the person running the business. And now I shifted everything online, and I'm literally the totem pole at the tadpole at the very bottom. So so I've kind of shifted directions, if you will, and I have to again dig myself back out of a hole. But it's been a fun journey. So I've transferred everything online, it's an interesting thing to go through, going from, again, being a person of importance, owning a business and so on and so forth, to a person not known at all. That's another thing that I've had to work through, and that value gap that I kind of had going on there. But but yeah, that's what I have going on, and I think it's going to be a fun, you know, I'm always enjoying like building new things, so I know it's going to be like once things get up and rolling. But the beginning of building something is always the tedious part, right? Just kind of getting it up and running. But that's where it is, man. Working with people on personal development and self-confidence, and it's been a fun journey so far.
That's really cool, man. So you guys got a little sampler platter today of what he could help you with. Just kind of got a little samples in there. So what's the website if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so I also have a podcast. It's called Good Wolf Project. You can go to goodwolfproject.us. There's actually a place where you can put in your name and email and get a PDF that has what I call the self-confidence cycle. It's basically 4 steps that you can do both in a moment-to-moment time frame, and actually sit down and reflect and go through the 4 steps to think about why your self-confidence is lacking long term. So you can go there and get that for free.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I'll link that in show notes so people can go right there from here. But Jerry, thanks so much, man. I think if everyone's honest with themselves, they lacked self-confidence at some time in their lives, and they could benefit from this training. Just go in there. If not enough, go check out that PDF and just see if it can help you. And then if you want to learn more, he can coach you up from there. But just go check that out. Check out the website. Check out the podcast as well. I'll link that in the show notes. But man, keep it up. I think there's so many people that are being held back from greatness because they don't have the confidence to kind of make that next jump. So you're doing a great work out in the world, and I appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well. You're doing a lot of good work yourself, brother. I appreciate it.
We're doing what we can, right? So, hey, thank
No
you
doubt.
guys so much for listening. Please share the episode. We'll see you guys next week on the Relentless Positivity Podcast.